I remember I went to the ladies' room or toilet. You go there, you close the door, there is graffiti around lessons and whatever. So even if a child will run away from a classroom and go to hide in the toilet, they're forced to learn. I use theater, I use music, and so everybody, even if you don't want to be a farmer, you have a role to play.
Hello, welcome to the Zero Hunger Project. And we are continuing our conversation with Dr. Hlami. I am Suman.
I'm Stacia.
And our topic is scale up, scale out, scale deep. Will this mentality will end world hunger? And who better to talk about than Dr. Hlami? Dr. Hlami, welcome back to our show.
Dr. Hlami Ngwenya is a South African-born global citizen, a recipient of the South African Presidential Award Order of the Baobab in Bronze in 2021 for her contributions to sustainable agriculture, education, and community empowerment. With a PhD in sustainable agriculture and 33 years of experience, she's an expert in facilitating systemic change in agri-food systems, which we learned about in this discussion. She is known for her exceptional skills in moderating high-level panels, policy dialogues, and UN multi-stakeholder engagements, and facilitation of multi-stakeholder engagements at all levels. A former senior manager in government, university lecturer, and international consultant, she has done assignments working in over 55 countries, engaging diverse stakeholders and navigating the complexities of the global food system. She's a proud mother of 3, a poet. We're very happy to have you back again.
Welcome to the conversation. So my question was about the Sustainable Development Goals, and we know the how the Sustainable Development Goals, how we are performing, and we got a ticking timeline of 5 years from now. But one thing that we see in North America, especially, and I want to know if you see the same around the world, is the Sustainable Development Goals haven't penetrated to the community. They stay primarily with academics and policymakers, but the day-to-day community members do not have a buy-in into this Sustainable Development Goals. Mm-hmm. Do you see that around the world? And if so, do you have anything to add to that?
Absolutely. And I think there's often a gap between policies and implementation. So when you look at Sustainable Development Goals, which we see at the global level. And it takes a long time for the message to cascade, down to where it is actually needed. And I think that is where responsibilities, people like us and you and whoever who knows about these things to really, spread, the word. But the other thing that I see is that people are they're innovating. They might not even call it, Sustainable Development Goals. But because I also work on the ground, and you realize that actually people are doing some of the things that, are indicated in the Sustainable Development Goals. However, they are not able to articulate it in that way. So I think that is where we play a role to say, okay, this one, they are actually, doing, some of the things that we are looking at. They are innovating. They are innovating around, sustainable ways of, production and things like that. But they never articulate it as, Sustainable Development Goals. So in any spaces that I find myself in and be able to educate people, I try to bridge, this gap where I said, actually, did you know that if you articulate what you are doing, you are already ticking, some of the boxes that, we want to see in terms of, where we are going with the Sustainable Development Goal. But in cases where people don't know, then I actually, bring it down. I just want to give a very practical example. Just last year, I visited a primary school back in Cape Town where I'm staying. I was going there for something completely different. they had a book fair, I'm a poet and all that. So I attend, those book fairs. So when I attended, this primary school, I think it's a West End primary school, I was fascinated by how they approach, learning. They have graffiti everywhere, but it's graffiti around, learning. They have written all the principles or the values of the school. So you can see that when a child enters that school, there is no way that you can learn. I remember I went to the ladies' room or toilet. You go there, you close the door, there is graffiti around, lessons and whatever. So even if a child will run away from a classroom and go to hide in the toilet, they are forced to learn. As a result of that, I actually went back to the school because I wanted to meet with the principal. I was fascinated about the work. And as I was talking to him, I started sharing about, the children could actually benefit from learning about agriculture. He said, oh, okay, I didn't think it that way. But the story I'm making, then I started talking about the SDGs and some of the things. And I'm saying, the way you are doing education, you are contributing to the SDG 4. He was like, okay, I didn't see that. But the point I'm making is that 6 months later, I tell you, the very same school, now they have a curriculum in agriculture. Yeah. So they adopted, and they didn't have a formal curriculum. So this principal actually added 30 minutes every day to accommodate, agriculture literacy, because the formal curriculum does not allow it. So he spoke to his team and all that. They agreed that if the school was supposed to end at 2, we're going to end at 2:30 so that, we have something, to teach your children around, agriculture literacy, and how he integrates that within maths or English or poetry and things like that. So it's this kind of, small actions, little actions that we do as individuals, which has a ripple effect. And if every individual out there who knows about the SDGs and whatever will share with one person, I think we will go far.
Can you imagine what would happen? I mean, to me, first of all, yes, that's a testimony to one person being able to materially change the outcome of a situation, like a very profound example of that. Also, I'm hearing a lot of the work that you're doing is conduit work. You feel like a conduit to me. You're a conduit and a connector of information and ideas and the people that are going to be able to action those ideas. And I feel like knowledge transfer, if we could somehow marry knowledge transfer and popular culture, somehow to make this more consumable for people and they can see themselves in it a little bit more than these sort of SDG goals that exist. You know what I mean?
It's more attainable.
That's right. They're less
Exactly.
lofty. People are very reverent when we talk about the United Nations and it all seems very, but like if you go out and say, I could spend 10 minutes right now telling you how you're achieving or at least orienting yourself towards 5 of these sustainable development goals, because it's not in the zeitgeist in terms of something that's easily metabolized as an idea,
Absolutely.
people don't even see that they're already doing it.
No, and I think that is the key thing that you mentioned is a lot of us are doing it.
And we don't
And-
even know we're doing it.
And talking from our organization, Feed Scarborough's perspective, when we started, SDG was nowhere in our agenda.
No.
We wanted to feed people. People are hungry at the beginning of COVID. Let's feed people.
Yeah.
That's how we started. And then at certain point, after a couple of years, we looked into it and it's like, look, we are touching at least 11 of the 17 SDGs. So we are doing it. Why not talk about it?
But I also feel like these posters, these SDG posters, need to be put up in bus shelters in Johannesburg and Mississauga and, in the Philippines. And people can see themselves in it because it's happening all around us. And at least
With examples.
it would inspire them, right, culturally relative examples. And it would inspire them at least to start talking about these
100%.
ideas.
Absolutely. It's very interesting. At home, he says, Peter, I'm not at home now. At home, on my refrigerator, I have, the 17 SDGs. So my kids, they're forced to actually look at these SDGs. Yeah, and when they are given assignment, at school and things like that, they pick, an SDG and they start, to talk about it, and these are small actions where, just to create this awareness, people are doing it already.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of the comments I'm getting when I've been telling people that I'm working with Suman on this podcast, it's sort of like, how can individuals make an impact when these problems seem so insurmountable? And when you distill it down to have people realize that it's entirely in their power
Yeah.
to achieve a lot of these things, it needs to be sort of demystified and kind of normalized a little bit and made applicable to everybody, no matter where they are. I think it'll be a lot easier for people to take up the mantle and kind of have it become more prevalent in conversations.
Absolutely. And I think that what a couple of examples that you talked about, and especially the school one, and I'm hoping TDSB, you're listening.
TDSB.
That is Toronto District School Board. I'm hoping somebody's listening, because it is these small things that makes a big difference.
And it's
at the
not
end.
small. Like, I mean, this is major stuff. But if you could introduce that also, you get kids on board. I have a 7-year-old who is like, can hardly wait to share his tender heart with saving the world. Like he's in it every day. He wants to clean up the oceans. They're really motivated, these kids. And,
Yes.
they want stuff to grab onto that they can do at home and feel good about and talk about with their friends. And
Absolutely.
I think, I mean, this could really have legs, as they say, if we found out the right delivery system.
Yeah, perhaps maybe what we could do, because I really literally adopted, the school. Perhaps if you have a similar primary school, we can actually link them. They could inspire each other. Why not?
Okay, there you go. We just had an idea
I
right
love
here.
that.
I
Oak
love that.
Ridge Community School. I am bugging you, the principal, because
getting
that's
a
right
shout out.
across my street. My kid goes there, and see how we can work. This is fantastic. Offline, we're going to talk about that. But one thing that we started doing, because we found that big gap in the community, especially for the community to understand the small things that goes towards the SDG goals, we are setting up one-day booths at the local malls.
Yeah.
That, hey, you're coming to the mall. We are here with some big signage and posters. Like, come by and stop by. Yeah, you're the local food bank. Yes, great. And we need your $2 or $5 you're going to put in my jar. But let's talk about what we can do.
You know what
and
they
what
need to
we are
do
doing.
is get on TikTok. I feel like, I know that sounds ridiculous, but like as a method of communication for generations of
Actually,
kids.
don't worry. This podcast is going to be on TikTok.
I think TikTok.
We did create an account for that.
I mean,
so
it's
there.
good, but it's where they all hang out. You know what I mean? Like it's about disseminating information and going to the place where everybody is to give them the information. So we need to somehow make the Sustainable Development Goals TikTok attractive, and then I feel like there's a giant demographic of people we could tap into.
Let me tell you somebody. You mentioned that I worked in different countries and all that. So there is this gentleman from the Caribbean, in Trinidad. So how he approaches it is he understands that young people like superheroes. They like Superman and Batman and all that. And he created a superhero around, food and food security. And he calls this agreement.
I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
He's not a young man anymore, but he's such a creative mind. So he's putting, agreement whenever there is a birthday party, the agreement goes with the costume. And, instead of, giving children, a party pack with sweets, he gives them like a seed. And he tells them, plant one seed, eat for free. Plant one tree, eat for free. Those kind of things. So it's amazing.
It's amazing. And I also think, like, not only does that help the kids who grow up in agriculturally heavy communities, it also helps kids who don't understand anything about agriculture, like
In city kids.
right? An inner city Toronto kid is not necessarily attached to where his food comes from. So, I mean, I think this would tick off a whole lot of boxes all at the same
100%.
time.
Absolutely. The reason why I used, this perfect campaign, it's my campaign to get everybody to understand that they have a role to play. So there are those children or those people who, when you say agriculture, they don't see themselves in agriculture. But I use theater, for example. I use music and all that. So everybody, even if you don't want to be a farmer, you have a role to play along the perfect container, right?
I love that because you can get involved in technology, you can get involved in research, you can get involved in education, you can be a policymaker if you want. You don't have to be a farmer, quote unquote, with your hands in the dirt, although I encourage everybody to stick their hands in the dirt because I think
Yep.
it's really good for you. But this is a vast continuum of activities where you can
Absolutely.
participate and contribute and see yourself in your community. I'm here for this. I'm very enthusiastic about this model that you have. I think it's great.
The reason why I'm using this perfect, I realized that when we sell these agri-food systems, we are not selling all the different pathways that could actually attract people. We are selling the farming pathway. If somebody doesn't want to be a farmer, they don't see themselves in this sector. So I'm saying, let us sell the perfect pathway. Let's sell the theater. Let's sell, the art. Let's sell, the technology. Let's sell the research. Let's sell, when you go to the school, an A student doesn't see themselves in the sector. And we want those A students to come to the sector through the perfect pathway.
I think it's brilliant, actually. I really, I think there's an elegance to it that I really like. It's non-exclusionary. It demonstrates an understanding of the problem as a whole. I think it's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think so. When I'm hearing all these stories, I'm really getting excited about it. But I'm also wondering: is there a place where there is a library of all this information that somebody in the sector who did not know about the agri-man can tap into and learn? Is there something out there that I don't know about?
I mean, no pressure in all your spare time. In all your spare time, could you please arrange?
It's like I'm a walking encyclopedia. So I
Yeah, I
might as
see
well
that. I know that.
write something about it.
Maybe we need to put you on TikTok. Maybe that's the solution.
Actually, I started putting together, so I call it the perfect angle, understanding agriculture through the perfect angle. So I've started, writing something. It's more like your go-to kind of, book where, exactly, like a handbook and all that. But I know that just 3 weeks ago, I was facilitating something for FAO as well. I know in October, they will be launching what we call the ATIO. ATIO is the Agri-Food Systems Technology Innovation Outlook. So they are putting together, it's an online platform of some sort where they want to put all the innovation from the world, from all over the world.
It needs a little bit of a catchier title, though. I mean, I think we have to.
Let's work with
It doesn't
FAO on that.
It doesn't exactly trip off the tongue.
So basically what they want to do is really to encourage people, but this is more around technology and innovations, to encourage, different stakeholders from different angles to really upload, so you can click on this platform and you can see what technologies and what innovations have worked where and all this. So they're really putting together this. And I was very excited because they invited me to facilitate the expert, input, where different people were looking at this prototype and giving feedback. And they brought, different stakeholders from your farmer organization to researchers and they will be launching, in October in Rome. So I'm looking forward, to seeing that here. But that doesn't mean that I'm not gonna write my perfect angle to agriculture. Yes.
Looking forward to that.
The poster child. We've just nominated you. Congratulations. I ask in these interviews, I ask a couple of questions. The first question is, in a perfect world, your pie in the sky, best case scenario, what does that look like for the work that you're doing?
Maybe two two ideas. And my heart really goes to the smallholder farmers that I serve, that I work with. I think the first one will be, I imagine a world where the development agenda, it's not driven by donors and big corporate, but it is driven by the smallholder farmers. In Africa, I mean, the smallholder farmers, they feed, I think, 80% of, the population, and they are really fed by smallholder farmers and all that. But what I see in terms of when we talk about access to markets and all that, as much as we want to be in this globalized, space and all that, the minimum standards for access to those things are based on maybe the West, as much as we want to be inclusive, but the minimum standards are exclusive. So I think for me, that perfect world will be where the smallholder farmers are really recognized for the work that they do. They produce, to really feed the nations where they are. Because at the moment they produce something, but it doesn't make its way into the market because it doesn't tick, all the boxes that the market has defined. So I think for me, that would be my perfect.
Getting rid of late stage capitalism basically is what your solution is to this problem. We just need to get rid of that and then everything will be fine.
Absolutely. So so that will be, the perfect world. The second one, I think it relates to that, but more in terms of research, and innovations. I go to these countries and I see how people are innovating and all that, but some of those ideas, they never make it to mainstream because they don't tick, boxes. And I also see it in my own country. When you look at South Africa as a country, it's a very interesting, country because we have three worlds, in inverted commas, in one country. Yeah, you have the first, the second, and the third. And the minimum standards are always based on the first world, which is okay because we want.
Which is true everywhere in the world, by the way. I mean, that's part of why the system is so broken.
Absolutely. And I think this is what I call the development paradox. So on one hand, we want to be a global player, which everybody aspire to be. But in the process of you becoming that global player, you leave a lot of people on the margins because they cannot tick the boxes that will allow them to be on that, on that stage. So I think it is an irony or maybe a paradox that that I personally also feel I wouldn't know how to solve that. But yeah.
I mean, one of the things I keep hearing you saying is about ticking the boxes, and it's about how do we get these people in front of the right people? How do we get things? I think it's about changing the stupid boxes that need to be ticked. I think it's the boxes that are broken. I don't think it's these people not trying hard enough or not having access. I think the boxes are terrible. And that's a very sort of reductive thing to say, but you keep saying these boxes aren't getting ticked, and I'm like, the boxes, I think the boxes are the problem.
Those boxes, especially, I mean, if you are in a global community, for example, I mean, it's a very highly competitive space, right? So it's like you constantly have to wear different hats. Yeah, because on one hand, I want to be competitive. I need to be in this space. But on the other hand, being competitive, I'm losing, a lot of, people. It's a very, very complex, system that we are operating in. And yeah.
And
Totally.
again, it comes down to commercialization and politicization. I mean, these are the two things that we keep talking about with different people in different areas of the whole notion of food security. And it comes down to money and politics every single time.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, that money talks. There is one of my poems. I call it, what is money? There's a poem that I wrote. Yeah, it's what is money?
Well,
It's
it's one of
fantastic.
those. I had a poster in my dorm when I was growing up that said something like it was an indigenous quote from somewhere, and of course I'm not quoting it properly at all, but the tagline was only when they realized that money can't be eaten, right? They've cut down all the trees, they've poisoned the water. When will people learn that we're actually tied, inexorably linked to the
Yeah,
earth? And it's once people realize that they can't eat money.
true. But the boxes you're talking about, I think that's a huge hindrance to innovation.
Yeah, it's a huge hindrance.
It's
I'm
chains.
learning as I go, and intellectually, I've always understood this, but it sounds like it's a
Yeah.
huge hindrance to everything.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you another question that I ask people frequently is you've done a lot of these interviews, you've traveled all over the place, you've done a lot of work in this sector, in the sphere. What are the questions that people aren't asking you? What are the things that you wish more people would ask you about that isn't getting enough oxygen as far as you're concerned?
I think for me, the big question that nobody really asks, and I think they should, is what am I unlearning? When we grow up, we always have, our worldview. Things are black and white, things are like this and all that. But with the exposure that I'm getting, I have to unlearn a lot of things for me to open the space to absorb, new things, new ideas. And sometimes I even have to unlearn certain values, the values that I had. I will give you a practical example. My father was a priest. May his soul rest in peace. So I grew up in a very, very Christian, family and, all the values and all that and stuff. And here am I work in spaces where there are different religions. I am forced to unlearn, some preconceived, ideas that I have, because now I need to see this person who comes from a different religion as mine. I have to see this person as a person before the religion. I cannot judge them as much as they have a different religion than mine. I cannot judge them. I need to be able to appreciate them as people. So for me, that was the biggest lesson that I had to learn, to say, I need to appreciate people for who they are.
Particularly when you've learned that as a child, that is probably ingrained, right? I mean, we have all of these sort of ingrained belief systems that were passed along from our families and our communities and whatnot, and walking yourself out of those is pretty tricky.
Absolutely.
But I think
Yeah.
is the solution to a whole lot of problems that we have
For sure.
everywhere.
Absolutely. And I think for me, that was the biggest, things that I had to unlearn. And there are many other things, because then I have to unlearn things around, cultural, differences. I have to unlearn certain things around, food, food, culture, just to appreciate people for who they are, to appreciate the diversity without having to judge. So I become a very less judgmental person.
Divesting yourself of cultural bias is not an easy ask, but particularly in your line of work, it's incredibly important because it's the only way ahead for you is if you can park those biases at the door when you show up at work in the morning.
Yes. But then the other thing that I had to unlearn. I had to unlearn the idea that, technical expertise always hold the answers. I have to move from my technical expertise and to be more dealing with softer, skills and all that. And the moment I acquire the soft skills, it enables me to deal with any technical expertise that you can think about. I work with biotechnologists. I work in agroecology. I work with, animal health specialists. I work with vets and all that. And people won't be surprised. Are you a vet? I'm like, no, I'm not a vet, but I call myself a human engineer. I do human engineering. so I had to unlearn that, technical know-how, it's good, but the softer skills, they reign supreme.
Yeah. There's a guy in the United States named Simon Sinek who does all kinds of really interesting stuff. And he talked about how they've stopped calling them soft skills because it sort of betrays how important these skills are, that they should be called
Exactly.
human skills or people skills or some other way that gives them more gravitas than they're getting. Because honestly, that the art of diplomacy, for example, those types of things that are considered sort of quote unquote soft skills are the things that are actually bringing these conversations to the fore. It's knowing how to read a room. It's knowing how
Absolutely.
to expand and contract where it's appropriate. Those are skills that shouldn't be sort of reduced to soft skills.
No.
They're hard skills to learn. Not everybody can do them.
Absolutely. That is why I call it human engineering. When people ask me, what do you do? I do human engineering. I'm engineering their brains. I'm engineering their perceptions.
I think it's re-engineering, though. You're a human re-engineer is what you are.
I absolutely love that term. I think, this is fantastic. So, Dr. Hlami, we are hitting our time. Thank you so much. I know it's really late in the
Please
evening
go
where you are.
immediately to bed, but I really am so grateful to you for spending time with us and teaching us all kinds of things. And it's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
And as we heard from the human engineer or human re-engineer, the term scale up, scale out, and scale deep. And maybe with innovations like that, we will one day end global hunger. So stay tuned for our next episodes coming up.